The Great White Brotherhood is a vast collective people who all, once, had an earthly incarnation, have now passed into the spiritual realms, and who work actively and never ceasing to assist humanity incarnate to come to terms with and to deal with the difficulties and travails of their individual and collective incarnations. The Great White Brotherhood was formed some thousands of years ago by the progenitors, a group of people who first realized that it would be possible to assist people incarnate. Some of that first group are still active, and some have passed 2 realms so far above the rest of us that they no longer have the means of communicating with us. Now we wish to make it plain to you who will receive this message that the group known as the Great White Brotherhood is totally dedicated to helping you who are incarnate and have effectively formed themselves into a sort of group soul over time, and so have formed a group personality that thinks as one. The Great White Brotherhood was formed by a relatively few, but spiritually awake group who decided that just living in the peace and joy of heaven was a selfish act, and that they had to take positive action to assist man incarnate, who was enslaved both physically and spiritually by archon-influenced people, and were, obviously, deeply unhappy and confused as to the reason why incarnation was being inflicted on them. Having no knowledge that they had in fact volunteered to incarnate, gradually, over time, more spiritually awake souls returned to heaven at the end of their incarnations and joined the Great White Brotherhood. This group of enlightened souls did not have a name at that time and still don't really need one. It is sufficient for them to know that they are working individually and collectively to help humanity incarnate. Names give no status in heaven. It is action that counts. But the point was soon reached where suitable candidates incarnate were sought to receive the wisdom of this group in order to spread that wisdom throughout Earth. So, after some thought, the name the Great White Brotherhood was chosen. At the time, it seemed the best name and described who this group were. Great implied a large collection. White implied purity of soul and ambition. Brotherhood implied a group joining together with one aim. However, over time, the meanings of words change. Today, unfortunately, great implies noble. White implies skin color. Brotherhood implies a group exclusively male. This is, of course, not at all representative of who the Great White Brotherhood are. The Great White Brotherhood are humble souls. There is no skin color in heaven. The Great White Brotherhood is open to both sexes, people incarnate and discarnate. But it is too late to change the name and start again, and it must be said, whatever name would be chosen, it would, over time, become criticized by those who do not wish to understand the aims and objectives of this group. So we continue with that name. Next came the problem of selecting earthly instruments willing and able to work with and for the Great White Brotherhood. It is easier in some respects today as people are more spiritually aware, but originally it was difficult indeed to find suitable candidates. There are a number of criteria that must be considered before a person incarnate can be trusted to impart to the world information entrusted to him. The first element, obviously, must be awareness that the Great White Brotherhood exists. This implies that the person selected has himself been contacted by telepathy, or has been informed of the Great White Brotherhood's existence. The next element is a burning desire to devote the rest of his incarnation and his progression through the heavenly spheres to the aims of the Brotherhood. Next, the person must have a reasonable command of his native tongue. We need to be able to impart information in the mind of the chosen person, so that it can be shared with the public who speaks the same language as that person. So, not only must the chosen person have a good and deep command of his native language, but also the ability to read and write that language. Memory is not sufficient. Then the person must be willing to develop telepathy, so that the Great White Brotherhood can communicate with him and he with them. Next, it is advisable that the chosen person not be indoctrinated by an imposed religion. He must have an open mind. So, you can see that to find suitable candidates throughout the world was difficult and still is. In some countries, even today, religions are imposed. Long years ago, it was even more so, and we had no desire to put people at risk of a painful death just to help us spread our message. Even today, it is not easy to find people who have a real command of their native language, and it is getting more difficult each day as artificial intelligence is taking over the role of education, and people rely on machines to speak and to write for them. So we search the world assiduously in an attempt to find suitable candidates willing to work with us. But here and there we find candidates, and we work hard with them to train them to our required standards. Not only in command of their language, but in the degree of their ability to develop telepathy and, in some cases, clairvoyance. Because we use a number of gifts of the Spirit in our desire to help humanity. But we will never give up. And so, gradually, our message is transmitted to the world. We are grateful for a recent invention, the Internet, that has assisted us greatly. I should also mention the detractors of the Great White Brotherhood. There has been, and still are, malignant forces that have done their best to suggest that our intentions are evil. We leave the people of the world to be judges of our intentions. We are often asked questions concerning the great masters of the past, and if they are members of the Great White Brotherhood, we must say that all the great masters are committed to helping their fellow man. Incarnate and discarnate, find and follow the path to God. Thus, although it is not our intention to name names, we are prepared to say that the aims and objectives of the masters and the aims of the Great White Brotherhood are one and the same. These aims are the path to God, which is found in the degree that love can fill the hearts of man. However, love is not sufficient. Knowledge of the path to God is necessary, and the wisdom to interpret that knowledge is paramount. Thus, the Great White Brotherhood is dedicated to sharing its knowledge of all aspects of life with all the people incarnate, and we will never cease to implement those aims.